Riddle me this. Why would I only charge you once when I can charge you monthly? Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's hump day, y'all. We're on the downhill slide to the weekend. Now, that also means it's time to talk about the addiction. Welcome to Wild Wednesday, everyone. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into one of the many long defunct products Blizzard, now Microsoft, allowed to wither on the vine, a World of Warcraft trading card game. Announced all the way back in August 2005 and released in October 2006, Upper Deck Entertainment brought us the first iteration of a card game incorporating the various iconic elements of World of Warcraft in a collectible card game form. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the only thing remembered about this game, however, are the loot cards containing their scratch off codes to be used for special rewards within the MMO. But it was a TCG first and a fun one in my experience. We're going to dive into it today. The design featured one on one player versus player format, as well as teaming up to defeat bosses based on the dungeon and raid bosses from the MMO. Each player had a deck utilizing a hero card. Think EDH Commander, where your deck has the figure in charge of everything, and the deck had to synergize with that figure. Just as in EDH Commander, there were many cards that included a trait icon, which dictated which hero could use them. And you're going to see a ton of copycat elements about this game with Magic the Gathering. Just going to get that out there right now. So moving on. Decks consisted of allies and supporting cards like weapons and abilities, armor and items, and quests. Unlike MTG, there is no land or mana. You get to play one card per turn, which enabled payment of additional cards to augment your hero's powers, or add additional members to the party. These played out cards stay until destroyed through various methods. The goal was to take out your opponent's hero and their allies, and your attacks would be directed at them, not at the opposing player. Also, damage accumulates between turns, so that made things expensive in the long term. The types of cards within the game consisted of, naturally, your hero. They start with a set amount of life, and they have their faction affiliation, the race, the class, specializations, and professions, but professions were discontinued later on. And finally, each hero has their own little power, only usable once a game. Heroes could level up too with Master Hero cards. When played, the Master Hero card replaced the existing Hero card, clearing everything to do with them at that point, including damage and items, etc., and the powers did not carry over either. Copying MTG again, the game had your sorceries, cards only playable on your turn, and your instants, cards playable whenever. The basic ability cards counted as your sorceries, while the unimaginatively named instant cards counted as, well, instants. You also had your allies, characters that would help you out. Some were faction specific and could only be used with a hero of the same faction. Some, however, were mercs, neutral, not caring about faction politics, and they could be used in any deck. There were several pieces of armor for the various body parts of your hero, mimicking the MMO. Once a turn, they could reduce damage, provided you paid their cost. And on the offensive side, you had your weapons, usable either defensively or offensively, but only once a turn, and they included a cost as well. There were also rings and potions and other things that could be used in various capacities. Quest cards were able to be completed by fulfilling a condition, and when they were, they would grant you some kind of boon or advantage. Then they turned face down. Locations were similar to quests, but did not end up face down when used, they stayed. Finally, loot cards counted as both something to be used in the game and containing the almighty code for the item within the MMO. Moving on. Now, it might surprise you all to learn that this game was robust, boasting 21 expansion sets and a reprint set. We're talking an avalanche of available cards for this game. Sold in booster packs originally of 15 cards, just like MTG. They actually ramped up to 18 cards per pack in 2007, running until 2011. Cards had a rarity code mirroring those in the MMO. White for vendor trash, green for uncommon, blue for rares, purple for epics, and orange for legendaries. Some sets had starter decks of 33 cards, kind of your beginner point for purchasing, baby's first deck or whatever. Four sets had starter decks: Heroes of Azeroth, Through the Dark Portal, March of the Legion, and Drums of War. In addition, there were class decks centered around a class theme. They had champion decks, and they had battle decks, which were designed to hand two people decks they could beat each other up with. They were purely PvP. 2006 saw only the single set released for Heroes of Azeroth. This was the base set, the first set, saying, here you go. '07, however, brought Through the Dark Portal, Fires of Outland, and March of the Legion. And '08 gave us Servants of the Betrayer, The Hunt for Illidan, and Drums of War. And still chugging right along, 2009 gave us Blood of Gladiators, Fields of Honor, and Scourge War. 2010 changed the formula slightly. We had the three standard sets in Wrathgate, Icecrown, and Worldbreaker, but we also saw the foil reprint set of Archives, giving us shiny versions of cards from Heroes of Azeroth and Fields of Honor. 2011 brought War of the Elements, Twilight of the Dragons, and Aftermath. Throne of the Tides. The Aftermath set would continue with this little Aftermath gimmick into 2012 with Crown of the Heavens and Tomb of the Forgotten. And then they switched the theme to Time Walkers for late 2012, giving us War of the Ancients, and then continuing it into 2013 with Betrayal of the Guardian and Reign of Fire. Now, where this game diverted greatly from MTG was in the raid decks. These were precons designed for co-op play. One player, the raid master, would control the bad guys, like a DM in Dungeons and Dragons, while the other 3 to 5 players would co-op with their own decks to try and defeat the monsters assembled against them. The format itself was cool as all hell. But even more so was that raid decks contained a treasure pack with goodies in it if the players defeated the bad guys. So that was very World of Warcraft like, and it was very cool. They released 8 raid decks. They had Onyxia's Lair in December 2006. Molten Core came out in May of '07. Magtheridon's Lair in '08, along with Black Temple that same year. Naxxramas was '09. Assault on Icecrown Citadel was in March of 2011. Battle of the Aspects was in 2012. And finally, Caverns of Time in 2013. Another cool as all hell format were dungeon decks. These were basically raid decks, but with no need for the raid master. They tried this format out in November 2011 with 3 decks. They had Shadowfang Keep, and they had Scarlet Monastery, and Dead Mines. The game also featured 7 special sets not tied to any particular release as far as, base sets and such. But they were more tied to, expansions in the MMO or events within the MMO. And they were the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Feast of Winter Veil, Dark Moon Fair, man, I love the Dark Moon Fair, Arena Grand Melee, and Feasts of Winter Veil in 2012. So see, these were all released for, whatever expansion was happening or an event that might be ongoing within the MMO. And these were neat little bonus content for us in there. It's pretty cool. And mirroring MTG, but honestly, really just expanding on MTG's various tournament events, the game would feature as part of the Dark Moon Fairs. These were events that ran over the weekend, and these were real life events. This wasn't an in-game thing. This was a real life event that ran over the weekend in cities all over the world. And it was billed as a miniatures event, but it had everything there, all kinds of geek stuff to get into. So it wasn't primarily a TCG event or a mini event. It was a bunch of stuff. Old school conventions were cool. However, it had competitions, and some of those competitions had some really impressive prizes. Like unlike MTG, which only ever gave out money and cards, these might hand you a sweet new computer or travel vouchers to other events. It was kind of neat. It was different. Now, from '07 to 2011, there was also a WoW Nationals and World Championships, just like MTG, where you'd compete through various formats to try and climb to the top of the pile. And additionally, there was a World Cup hosted in Paris in 2011. So the game was thriving. It might have been inspired by and hoped to cut into the profits of Magic the Gathering, but it had grown more or less into its own thing over the 6 or 7 years of its existence. And me personally, I was and am a big fan of, MTG, strictly casual these days. And obviously, I'm a big WoW player. So this was right there in my box of toys. It was hard to find the cards around here, around the MOV, but I snatched them up whenever I did. And it would cut into the MTG budget, and I'm sure that was the intent. But y'all might notice that there is no discussion of this game beyond 2013. Well, in August 2013, Blizzard announced they wouldn't be renewing the license. And not even a year later, Blizz released Hearthstone, the 100% online only and digital only version of their game. Well, that's being generous. Hearthstone didn't feature the massive raid and dungeon battles of the WoW TCG. It was strictly 1v1 for the most part, with some few little exceptions. It wasn't the same beast. They kind of trimmed it down, narrowed it, and said, this is what you get. And it was online only and it was digital only, so you own nothing. And that's where we get the rub of it. Why invest a ton of money selling people actual physical cards that they're only going to buy once when you can filch them month to month for eternity or until you arbitrarily just shut the game down? Now, that being said, Hearthstone is a big success for Blizz. It's actually filling that esport niche they so desperately want to be a part of. And heck, there's a part of me that wonders if Hearthstone's esport success isn't one of the many factors pushing the World of Warcraft development team to focus almost entirely on the esport aspects of the game and just pay lip service to the rest of it. But food for thought. But there you have it, folks. The history of WoW's trading card game. I personally still own several cards and found the game pretty fun the few times I got to play it with folks or just solo playing it around the house. Yes, I solo play card games as well. I glanced at eBay in researching this and just to see what, eBay, Amazon, etc., just to see what the cards might go for these days. And I was surprised to see them very reasonable, very much on par with, old MTG cards. Not so much the hyper expensive new sets. That's a different kettle of fish. So, if that's something this video has made you curious about, I believe it's entirely possible to build a little collection for not much more than you drop on MTG. So, there's that. Now, heck, now that I'm talking about it, I might very well try to snag a few bits and pieces just on the off chance I ever bust out those cards again. Yeah. But that's about all I got for right now, folks. I do appreciate y'all for giving me a moment of your time. I hope I provided some entertainment for your day, and if I did, feel free to hit that like button. YouTube loves it when you do, and it helps keep this itty bitty little channel a growing. A big country welcome to all the new subscribers that jumped on board with the channel here. Howdy, y'all. And a big shout out to the missus. This video is actually her idea. She said, I want to know more about the trading card game, the cards you have. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, that'd make an awesome video. So, off I went. Now, it seems as if the heat has returned. Darn it. So be careful if you're going out. Maybe grab the sunscreen. But make sure you make some time today to do something fun too. Maybe bust out some cards or some dice, pop in a good movie, watch a cartoon, read a comic, make some memories, drink your water, and as always, have a good one.